Hey, hello everybody. It's Eric Edmeades here with Thrive Time. I'm so excited to be back and so excited to be talking about something that you know that I am particularly passionate about, and that is health and food. But more than that, I want to talk specifically about some trends that are happening right now that have an incredible impact on us and society. And here's where we're going. Have you heard of pandemic pounds? Have you heard of the COVID-15? COVID-15 is not the virus 4 generations ago. COVID-15 is apparently the 15 pounds or the 15 kilos that people are kind of accepting that they might put on during this time. And so those pandemic pounds, that COVID-15 is what we're sort of going to be talking about today, because more and more people are now searching on Google, what diet can get rid of my pandemic pounds? And so today we're going to talk about why diets don't work. In fact, I want to share with you this basic idea, and that is that people don't fail diets. Diets fail people. And the science on this is really clear. Depending on where you look, you find a bunch of different statistics that suggest, for example, that about 1% of people are able to actually get benefit out of a diet they attempt. That's not the highest success rate I've ever heard of. And then on top of that, there's another statistic that suggests that people gain 3 pounds every time they go on a diet. And so this is a challenge, particularly in light of the fact that now people have turned more to comfort foods. They've turned more to comfort foods because these are uncomfortable times. And so there we have the pandemic pounds, and there we have the COVID-15 piling on. And before we start talking about why diets fail, because what I ultimately want you to get from this is whatever diet you attempt, whatever transformation you would try to create with your relationship for food, I would like it to work. I would like it to work. So I'm going to share with you the strategies that don't work so that you can identify how to make something work. But before we get there, let's talk about this. In previous episodes, we've talked about the impact of health relative to COVID-19. We've talked about this. Studies are showing us right now that in order to die or face serious hospitalization from COVID-19, one of the things that has to be in place for 50% of those people is that they have to have 3 major diseases, 3 additional major diseases. And then 25% have to have at least 2, and another 25% have to have at least 1, which means there's almost nobody suffering significant hospitalization or disease or dying from COVID unless they've got one of those conditions. And what are those conditions? Cardiovascular disease, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and chronic respiratory disease, all of which are influenced by what we now think of as lifestyle. But I want to suggest to you that we don't want to call it a lifestyle disease, because that is a method of creating blame. That's one of the ways that we create blame. The idea of lifestyle disease is a great way for the government or the food agencies or what have you to shift the blame to you and me. Oh, it's a lifestyle disease. You chose badly. If you just ate a little less or you just moved a little more, you wouldn't have this problem. And while on some level those things are true, it completely leaves out the systemic destruction of the food manufacturing industry, the manipulation of the food marketing and lobbying industry, and the bought and sold nature of the governmental regulation and legislation of food. In other words, it's a shared responsibility. I would go so far as to say that if you or anybody you know is dealing with one of these lifestyle diseases, or if you are dealing with being overweight, or you're dealing with type 2 diabetes, or any of these things, the most important message I have for you is that it is not your fault. It is not your fault, because we have a broken food system. And I want to say this, though. It is your responsibility. That's the hard part. It's not your fault. It's your responsibility. Somebody comes along and smashes into you in your car. You've had a car accident. They drove into you. It's not your fault, but your recovery is going to be your responsibility. And so now it's our responsibility. And I want to talk about why diets don't work. One of the biggest reasons they don't work is that they are inherently designed in a way that damages people's self-esteem. Think about this. Somebody has some body issues. Maybe they're carrying a few pounds they wish they weren't. Maybe they don't have as much self-control as they wish they did. Okay, so then what? Well, they want to go on a diet. They want to change something because they ultimately want to feel better. But the very thing that drove them to go on the diet is a questionable feeling about their body image and their self-esteem. So you see, they walk into the conversation already in a little bit of psychological danger, but then they go to a diet. And what does the diet do from the beginning? From the beginning, it introduces a bunch of concepts that are about shame. From the very beginning, it creates a bunch of rules that are almost impossible to adhere to. And each time you chisel away at one of those rules, because life is full of exceptions. Each time you break one of those rules, your self-esteem takes a slight dip. And each time your self-esteem takes a slight dip, your self-control also takes a slight dip, which causes the inevitable slide. And that's why when I've been working with clients, many tens of thousands of clients in over 130 countries around the world, once I've spoken to them for 2 weeks, once I've connected with them for just 2 weeks, I often ask them, how many of you, this is the longest you've ever been able to stick to a diet? And it's 85%. I want you to think about that. 85% of those people have not been able to stick with a diet or a regime change around their food for longer than 2 weeks. That's because diets are designed to fail. I'll give you another example. Calorie counting. Calorie counting is basically the nutritional equivalent of Enron accounting. It is a garbage system of accounting, and it's a terrible measure of weight, a terrible measure of weight loss and health. Calorie counting is a bad science. And I'll give you one silly example of this, but in order for it to work, if we were going to apply proper accounting principles to it, you would have to count all the calories that were coming in. You'd have to figure out all the calories involved in processing the calories. You'd then have to figure out the baseline calories revolved just to live. Then you'd have to take a look at the calories you're burning to move around and all that stuff. Then you'd have to measure the calories that you poop out. The organic material that comes out of you also has calories in it. But nobody ever talks about that because it's a bad accounting system for a number of reasons, including what I've just pointed out. And this, calories are not created equally. There are different kinds of calories. Are calories good or bad? I don't know. Which ones are you talking about? Some calories are incredibly bad and some are incredibly good. Counting calories is a pointless exercise. Oh, and while we're talking about pointlessness, let's talk about calorie restriction, another completely pointless idea. Why? Because when you start to restrict calories, your body starts to feel like you're starving. And so as you restrict the calories and your body starts to feel like it's starving, guess what your body wants to do? Eat. Your body just wants to eat. And so then you start feeling like you're starving. Oh, and by the way, have you ever noticed the hungrier you get, the more flexible you are about your rules about food? Well, that's another reason that diets fail, because they put you on calorie restriction. Then you start increasing your level of hunger, and the hungrier you get, the less willpower you have. And so again, designed to fail. How about this? Most people in the Western world today eat far too much energy and not enough non-energy nutrients. Let me say this again. Most people are overeating calories and under-eating the non-caloric portion of their diet. They're not getting enough minerals. They're not getting enough vitamins. They're not getting enough of the healthy fats. They're not getting enough amino acids and proteins. They're eating too much carbohydrate food. They're eating too much energy food and not enough non-energy nutrient food. Now, if we take that person who's already overstimulated with energy and undernourished, malnourished, in other words, starving slowly, and then we put them on a calorie restriction diet, what do you think is going to happen? They're now going to end up with even lower levels of nutrition than they ever had before, which means that they're opening themselves up to a variety of health problems and massive, massive cravings. Oh, also, diets are built around the concept of shame, like diet programs that make you go to a meeting and check in. Did you slip? Did you trip? Did you cheat? Cheat! And somehow we turn the word cheat into something fun. Oh, I cheated a little bit this weekend. And it becomes this fun thing. I don't think your husband or wife would think it's a fun thing. It's not. But diets are built around this idea of making cheating fun and then having you have shame about it. And so what I want to suggest to you is that if we want to make real lasting change, if we want to make real lasting change to our relationship with food, we have to avoid some of these obvious pitfalls that have been failing us decade by decade. And what has that led to? It's led to prolific levels of obesity. It's led to an explosion of type 2 diabetes and a variety of other lifestyle diseases. And I can tell you that it didn't need to be this way. When the American government hired people to come up with the food pyramid, they designed an outstanding food pyramid. And then the government took that food pyramid, and over a space of something like 10 years, they allowed the food industry to influence that food pyramid. In other words, the food pyramid is now a sponsored, bought, and paid for set of guidelines, while food manufacturers bicker over their share of your plate with no thought to your health. That's not what they're interested in. In fact, early on in the sugar versus fat battle, there was an incredibly good round played between sugar and fat, where sugar hired Harvard researchers to blame fat, to make us all think that fat was terrible, so that sugar could take those calories off the plate, that sugar could have those calories and replace themselves. And this is not a conspiracy theory. Henry Haas, working for the lobbyist that made this deal happen, said at a beet growers conference, research has now indicated that fat is causing all these diseases. What he doesn't tell you is that the nutritionists that did that research were bought and paid for by him. He then goes on to say that as Americans move away from fat, it will free up 20% of the plate space. And if the carbohydrate industry can grab it and maintain the share we already had, it will speak of an incredible opportunity. 1954. By the 1970s, the impact was already starting to get felt by the populations around the world. But between 1970 and today, obesity has exploded around the world. Diabetes has exploded around the world. We are at pandemic levels of food problems. And oddly, the lockdown pandemic, or the pandemic lockdown, I should say, has made it worse. As people have drifted into their old habits, they've gone to their comfort foods. They've moved less than they did before, and they've put on their pandemic pounds. They've put on their COVID-15, and now they will turn to the diet industry to dig them out. And the diet industry will ask them to count calories. It will ask them to exercise their way to health, which absolutely doesn't work. It will ask them to restrict their calories, and it will set them up for failure. Listen to me now. If you have a health condition, if you are carrying weight, if you're type 2 diabetic, it is absolutely not your fault. And it is your responsibility. Welcome to Thrive Time, and we're going to be talking to our guests very soon. I thought you guys needed to see a little bit of the intro this second time around as well. Welcome back, everybody. It's Edmeades here. I really enjoy talking about food psychology. I really enjoy it because every single time I do it, I get all this commentary back from people on Instagram and Facebook. And it's so very interesting to me, the types of things that I see. 11 or 12 weeks ago, I released a video saying that if you wanted to protect yourself from COVID-19, the best thing you could do really is follow the guidelines around social distancing and take care of your diet. And you know what I got? A lot of people writing to me going, thank God that I turned my relationship with food around. Many of them clients of mine through WildFit, and many of them finding other ways to do it. Many people writing, I'm so glad my immune system is at a better state because I turned these things around. And then there were the doctors and nutritionists that attacked me and said, that's not how the immune system works. Well, I think we found in the 3 months since then that it absolutely does work that way. That our health is not just about our later years. Our health is about keeping healthy now. And so I love to talk about this topic because the food industry spends a huge amount of time, money, and focus getting people to eat the way they wish they wouldn't, and allowing people to end up with guilt and pain and suffering around their diet. And so today we're going to talk about a very important idea, and that is that if you have ever felt like you failed a diet, you didn't. It failed you. And if you feel like you then went on and failed at another diet, nope, you didn't. It failed you. And then if you tried another diet and it failed you, now you're starting to understand that people don't fail diets. Diets fail people. And today we're going to talk about how people have found their way through this nightmare, how people have found their way through the jungle, and how they've managed to defeat the diet industry and the food industry and start to turn their health around. And we're going to learn some powerful things about that so that we can have increased senses of food freedom. Our first guest today is going to be Esther. Esther, I am so happy to welcome you to the show. Say hello to everybody. Esther, I'm not getting sound from you, Esther. I don't know why. Okay, I'm gonna have to let's see here, Esther. I'm gonna have to switch over, but if you could keep playing with your sound, we're gonna get you back on the show as soon as we can. Kelsey, if you could please work with her. In the meantime, we're gonna get Marcia on live with us here. Marcia, I hope your sound is working. It's good to have you here. Hello.
Hello, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Ken.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Happy to be here.
So, let's talk about food, diet. What's your experience, and what would you like to share?
I started dieting in and out when I was about 18, I think. I grew up never really happy about my weight, and things got worse with time, right? So I had some diets that were successful, but I would always end up gaining weight. And bear in mind that I was living in Europe, in Portugal, and then I moved into the US, where I've been for 7 years. And I started to notice my weight increasing, right? I was highly addicted on bread, on desserts, like that sugar too. And my sugar monster was really high, let's just say. And and then I decided to learn about food because I felt I couldn't go on this way, right? So I began the Wild Fit program 2 years ago, and that really taught me a lot about food, what I was doing wrong, and what was really healthy for my body. So it created a revolution for myself because I realized that before I was dieting for external reasons, that I wanted to look good for other people. But then it became my transformation because I realized I need to feel good about myself, my health, so that I can continue to have the rhythm of life that I have here. And it even brought me to be more aware how after doing WildFit, I could also exercise and have a healthy lifestyle. So to me, it was a big transformation because I finally could also commit to an exercise routine when before I couldn't. So, because I saw this transformation and with COVID-19, I saw how people were eating so badly, like you mentioned, and I saw it here in New York, the shelves, when we went to the supermarket, we would see that all the bad stuff, like sugary stuff, was flying off the shelves. And then you see like vegetables and everything still available, which was good for me, but it's not good for the overall. And how this lockdown was happening a lot because people were not taking care of themselves. So
Mm,
I decided to join the coaching for WildFit because I want to bring that awareness to people. And I've realized that although I cannot vote in this country, but I can make a difference because when I go to some places and I ask for the type of food that I eat, usually people want to sell it, so they will get it from me. So I think that we all can be part of this transformation, and I just wanted to leave that message actually.
that's excellent. So, Marcia, let me ask you. I want to go into I want to go a little bit into what really happened for you. So, what were some of the foods that used to have, say, power or control over you?
I would say bread, for instance, and I did a lot of pastas, rice, um, and then I got into a path that I was really craving for dessert every day, and now I no
No
longer.
kidding. And hang on, Marcia. How many of you guys in the audience you can relate to this? Like the bread having control, rice, pasta, the carbohydrates. Yeah, you see, Marcia, it's very common for people to feel that. And at what point did you start to feel like you had a degree of freedom from bread? Like, do you remember there was that? Like, was there a moment where you were like, oh, it's not really there for me anymore?
I think when I started to feel more nourished with the program, and then realizing how all it was affecting me, because also dairy was something that it's below my freedom line now, because it's something that really impacts my health in terms of my sinuses. I
Mm-hmm.
noticed how that really was impacting how my infection was growing. And I think I was like here the other day about the COVID-19. I actually had the antibodies, and I mentioned that I didn't really feel anything. When if I was eating like before, I feel like I would have been more impacted. by
Hold on a
bread.
second. Are you saying you tested positive for the COVID-19 antibodies
Yes, yes.
and you had no symptoms?
No, I just had like a mild cough that I thought, it was just like allergies from the weather. And like 3, 4 days, I didn't feel anything else.
Do you know, I'm so encouraged to hear that. One of the problems that we have right now with the press is that the press is not interested in your story of having no symptoms. I saw a headline just a week ago: 30-year-old man dies of COVID-19. And I was like, oh my God, everything I've said is wrong. But you know what I found? What I found is, as dishonest as the press is, the place of the highest level of dishonesty is in the headline. If you go past the headline, then sometimes you can find a measure of honesty under the headline in the story. And so I thought, why don't I try that? And this is, by the way, I've noticed a lot of people don't read the story. People are posting stuff online. Look at this headline I saw, and they don't read the story. So I decided I'll break with the tradition and I'll read the story. And it turned out the poor young man had been battling cancer for 6 years. He had another sugar problem he was having. Like, he was sick. And but with the press, CNN is not going to be calling you, Marcia, anytime going, so Marcia, tell us how your COVID-19 experience. Oh, it was mild and you had no, get another guest. So I'm really, really happy for you that you had that experience. And by the way, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, on Facebook, I don't want to diminish the fact that I understand that people are getting sick. I get it. And I'm not making fun of that at all. What I'm suggesting is that we are in a world right now where the press is trying to frighten us constantly. And so we're at a stage right now where the very best place for the press to operate is at what we would think of as the edges of the bell curve. That's where the press wants to operate, is at the edges of the bell curve, at the extremes. And so that's why you're going to hear always the extreme of this and the extreme of that. And of course, what we're going to hear is the extremes of what is causing the problem. Marcia, tell me, I can relate to your feelings about bread because I had the same thing going on with bread for many, many years. What's your relationship like with bread today?
Well, I can see it and I don't really feel like eating it. I do feel like there's that emotional attachment because I miss home. So when I go home, sometimes occasionally I have it, but it's something that I know I have to be well nourished to also take that in.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, I have that notion that before I didn't know. So knowing that, it's really helpful.
That's so, like, this concept of food freedom that we talk a lot about at WildFit really is important. And I'll tell you that when I first gave up bread, I did it with pure the willpower thing. And I just gave it up because I knew and by the way, for everybody's watching, I'm not saying you have to give up bread. I had to. Right? I had to. Not, it doesn't mean you have to give up your entire relationship with bread necessarily. And so, but I felt like I had to. But that's because I was, even back then, running the old diet paradigm, which is like, I have to give this thing up. And you know what I have found since is I rarely ever eat bread, but I do occasionally, very occasionally. I was in Italy last year with some friends and I decided I'm going to have some pizza. Now, I won't break the dairy thing. I don't eat milk and cheese. I just don't do that. That's my rule. That's my freedom. But I decided I'm going to have this pizza. And Marcia, what was really great is I did that. And then I didn't, like I would have 20 years before. Oh, I ate pizza on Monday, so I may as well eat bread on Tuesday and all that kind of stuff. So freedom is not, to me, freedom is not like I can't have this anymore. Freedom is I don't really want to. And if I do, I will. Does it feel like that for you?
Yeah, and you mentioned pizza. During the lockdown, I also ordered pizza for me. Also, no dairy, just like a veggie pizza. And I was like, okay, I want to have it. Although I was trying to eat healthy because, I wanted to make sure that I was in good condition in case I would get the virus. But yeah, so I also did the same. So it's like you said, it's not that I cannot have this anymore.
Yeah, that's really important. And just talk to me a little bit about your, talk a little bit about health. Like, how has it changed your body, your health, your mind, your life experience to have a different relationship with food?
So I have an active lifestyle in the sense that I walk a lot here in New York, and I actually live on a fifth floor walk up, right? So I realized I really need to stay in shape in order to continue my lifestyle. And the more I feel nourished with what I'm eating, the better I feel, the more energy I have. We also know throughout the program there's this part where we we flip the switch, and then that happened to me, and I know it now. So, and I know how to transition between seasons because it's normal with our body fluctuations, but it does change for me. I'm not always the same, but I know how when to get into each season and how I should be eating. So it's much easier for me to make my decisions too regarding food, right?
Well, I am so happy for you, Marcia. I really am. I really, I know opening up this show that I'm going to end up with, I'm sure some people that are like, how can I have food freedom? But it's really nice to start with you saying, look, it's possible. Because frankly, what people see these days is they just see marketing about diet programs, and all they see is a bunch of before after pictures. And usually it seems to be like the average diet, they go get like one, oh my God, we got one good one. And they put that everywhere. But for people to hear from you, the direct personal experience, I think that's pretty important. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing. Thanks so very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to share too.
We're gonna go over to Laura now. Laura's waiting in the waiting room here. Laura, how are you? Oh wow, we are seriously having sound issues today. That's insane. I can't hear Laura. Can you guys in the audience hear Laura? No, you guys can't hear Laura either. Laura, I'm going to have to put you back out to the waiting room while you figure out sound, and we're going to go over to Nicola. Sorry about that, Laura, but we will give you, get working with the team. We'll figure out what's going on. And Nicola, how are you doing?
I'm doing well so far.
Oh, good.
Thanks, Eric. Now, I am a total fan of wild food, and I did it like 2 years ago. Do you hear an echo?
No, but you might from me because
Okay.
Carry on. Tell us.
All right.
Carry on.
All right. And last year, my mother died suddenly, very unexpectedly. And since I'm from Germany, the land of bread, cookies, cake, of course, I put all the 10 kilo that I lost or shed during the wild fit back on, and all the benefits that I felt before, it was so amazing. I had a better memory. So no more brain clouds. I shed the 10 kilo. I had a really great sleep, and I just felt joy. And my flamenco skirt from 20 years ago did fit again. So lots of benefits here. And even though I know that, this bread still came back to me. So my question is, this was total emotional eating. I know all that. What is the best way to really, as a former WildFit client, to really get back onto the right track fast? And is it important to take supplements?
Okay, so let's back up for a minute. There's a couple different questions. Yeah, and so I'll talk about the supplements first. Just this is my take on supplements, is that yes, these days it probably is a good idea to consider your relationship with supplements, but this is the Wild Fit methodology on supplements. The first step is to get your diet right. That's the first step. You see, the word supplement means in addition to, not in replacement of. In fact, you might be familiar with the famous pediatrician, Dr. Spock, not the pointy-eared one, the actual pediatrician, Dr. Spock. And Dr. Spock, at some point in his career, he just woke up to the reality of what was going on out there and said, no, we shouldn't be having dairy products for our kids and all that kind of stuff. And then this friend of his came out and said that he thought maybe Dr. Spock was slipping mentally, and that's why he was saying these things. Like this, I saw this interview. He's like, yeah, well, he's a smart guy, but I think, maybe something. I couldn't believe he was saying it. But then I saw in the interview, the interviewer says to him, no kidding, do you eat vegetables? Do you eat fruits and vegetables? And the guy goes, hell no. I've never liked that stuff. I just take pills. Now, supplement doesn't mean that. That's not what a supplement in addition to, not replacement of. And so step one is to get your relationship right with food. And then step two is to then see if you have observed nutritional deficiencies, like get a test and find out if there's actually a problem. And then if there's actually a problem, then you still look to lifestyle to solve that problem before leaning on supplements. And then if after that you're still suffering or you can't do it through lifestyle, then we turn to supplements. So I'll give you a good example. Somebody gets their diet right, they get their relationship with food right, but they're having a vitamin D deficiency, let's say, a measured vitamin D deficiency. Okay, no problem. So, well, it is a problem because, by the way, if you want to know, vitamin D is turning out to be a major influence in this COVID-19 issue. So you don't want to be vitamin D deficient during this time. You want to be topped up. So then you could go get a bottle of vitamin D, or you could do the natural lifestyle thing. And you could take a look and say, well, wait a second. The best way to get vitamin D is to go outside in the sun and get sunlight on your skin. And then your body makes its own vitamin D. And so then you would do that. And if that failed or it was unavailable to you because you live, you're in Alaska and you've got 6 months of dark, or you live in England, or you live in you live in Seattle or Vancouver, and there just isn't a lot of sunlight available for you. Well, then if you then can't do it, then you start taking a look at taking supplements. Now, there are some base supplements that I believe are pretty important generally, and I think you don't have to go get a test to find out if it's a good idea. When you know there's flu season going around, or there's COVID-19 walking around the planet, then I think it's probably a good idea to boost up on vitamin C. I think it's a good idea to take magnesium supplements from time to time, and I think zinc is pretty good, and I think you got to get yourself some vitamin D, but I think you should make your own. So that's my basic take on supplements. And we could go deeper into some other supplements that might be useful, but I would say first, lifestyle first, supplement second. And it's built right in the name, supplement. Okay, good. So then let's talk about how to get back on track, because that's step one, is to get back on track. And so Nicola, the good news is that you have something that the average person on the street doesn't necessarily have, and that is that you know that it works. Mm-hmm. When our average client comes to us the first time, and by the way, I'm curious, how many people in the audience right now, how many of you guys out there in the audience are a WildFit client? You've done the WildFit Challenge. I'm curious. How many of you did it and there was a big part of you going, I'm doing this, but I just don't know. I just don't think it's going to work. Like, how many of you kind of had some of that going on because diets have failed you? Look at that. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I wouldn't have signed up if I didn't think it was going to work, but I knew it might not work. It's kind of like that, right? And so, Nicola, the good news for you is you're past that now. You absolutely know that it works. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, now, if you're talking to a friend, it's like, no, it works. It works, right? So you've got that on your side, Nicola. You have that on your side. So what's the best step, I think, for you? I think the best step for you is one of two things. It's go back and do the first 2 weeks of the program again and remind yourself of the psychological patterns and taking a look at the food timeline and getting back in to listen to the food angel and the food devil, like figuring out that food psychology piece. And if you go back and do those first 2 weeks, then I think that's going to help you. Another option is you already understand the steps. You don't need to go through the steps incrementally anymore. You could just take a look and say, you know what? It's time to go to spring. I'm going to go to spring. And you go to Peter and you go, Peter, we're going to spring. And by the way, I think that if you do it as a team, it might be a little bit more useful. It might be a little easier. And then the third thing is that maybe you jump in and get book yourself an hour with one of our WildFit coaches to have a conversation about where you kind of what happened that you kind of let one exception turn to the next exception, because maybe they can help inoculate you so you don't have that experience again. And bear in mind that on June 8th, we are doing something we've never done before. So about 18 months ago, we launched a brand new program, which is a 2-week food reset. It's effectively the first 2 weeks of the WildFit Challenge. And we have been running that now for about 1.5 years. I'm not involved. I mean, the videos of me are there, but I'm not, generally involved in the classes. But on June 8th, in response to this COVID-19 fiasco that we're in, we decided to do a huge global challenge. So we have people from all over the world coming in and doing one big 2-week challenge together, and I'm hosting it. I'm hosting it with Ariel. So the two of us are going to be in there. So maybe there you go. You got to wait a week and jump into the June 8th program. And maybe that's when you can begin to reset everything.
Okay. Thanks a
Cool.
bunch.
Nicola,
Peter has
so
to
good to
stop.
see you. Sorry?
Peter just has to stop dreaming about chips all the time. That's my problem.
Well, why don't you go get Peter and get him to join on the show, and maybe we can help him with that right here live. So you go see if Peter's up for that. Nicola, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you.
And guys, one of the things that I think is so very important about this is that we have success and retention rates that just haven't really been seen before in the diet space. And I don't really mean to turn this into too much of a commercial here. I just want to point out that, yeah, sometimes when life comes along, there can be this moment. It's like, oh, wow, I know that I'm headed in the wrong direction. But you see, if you listen to Nicola, there wasn't a lot of guilt or shame about it. It was more of an intellectual process of, okay, I see where I've gone. And now I'm gonna take a different view. And that's what's so very important, is that we don't damage people's self-esteem, but that we help them build their self-esteem. And when we help them build their self-esteem, they are way more likely to be successful because they feel strong. So we're going to go back to Laura. Hopefully Laura's on live with us. I do see that we're getting sound from Laura, so I think we should be all good. Laura, it is so good to have you on the show. How are you doing today? We do have sound from you. Oh, there we go. There we go. There's a delay.
Sound sorted. Yay. Oh, great. Well, not great on the delay, but at least we're here, right? Yeah, thank you so much for having me and letting me come on and share my story. So for me, my WildFit journey started nearly a year ago. It was August that I joined the program. And it just came at the perfect time. I had signed up for a business development course and put aside some money for that. And then that course ended up being canceled. And I saw your chat with Vishen and watched this Q&A that you did together. And there was just something in me that said, you have to do this. Because where I was at is I felt trapped. I was addicted to sugar. And have been, have tried everything. It's that classic story of just nothing worked, and I literally felt like an addict. I felt like sugar was my addict. If it was, my big ones at the time were Ben & Jerry's chocolate chip ice cream, chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, cookie dough, full stop, Kraft Dinner, which I totally understand where that comes from. And that childhood need and attraction for that. But if those things were in the house, it was like, that was it. I was done. The Ben & Jerry's would go in one sitting, like no shame. It would go in one sitting. And in doing the program, the biggest thing for me, and the thing that I always say to people now after the fact, having done it is the only program, and I literally say, I've tried everything, is the only program that actually looked at the psychology behind eating and the why. And I understand now why I would choose to eat the foods that I would and why I would eat them in the way that I did. And the spillover, actually, the funny thing that I could have never predicted is how that has, I've seen that, I believe that, how you do one thing is how you do everything in life. And the tools that I've learned and how I've been able to apply those to other areas of my life, to my husband and I, our business, to money, to other aspects of health, really understanding why I make the decisions that I do is that's been really surprising. But also I've become a better cook. Like, I could bake, I could cook, I could follow a recipe, but like I'm creative now. I make up recipes. And my husband loves that. He can't believe it. So that's been a lovely, lovely side effect. And for me, it was never about the numbers. I knew that I wasn't wildly overweight. I knew that I wasn't at my healthiest. But I just knew that the course that I was on, it was just year after year, a little bit more. And I'll tell you what was the big thing is, like, I'm in my 30s. I'm not going to tell you exactly where in my 30s I am, but I'm in my 30s and I would have the worst outbreaks. I would get these spots and they would be around for like months. And I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I shouldn't be dealing with this. Like acne, that's a kid's problem, right? And that, I'm also an actor. and feeling like I couldn't show up on set and know that my skin was going to be reliably clear. That was just, it was so frustrating to me. And honestly, my skin is, knowing that it's just going to be good, it's going to be clear, I'm not going to have an outbreak because of the milk that I've eaten, or the sugar that I've been consuming. It's honestly, it feels so great. And yeah, I was at home in Canada with my family over Christmas, and we were in Canada and the US for about 6 weeks. I had no desire to go and get a box of Kraft Dinner, and I used to pack it in my suitcase and bring it back to the UK with me. That's what it was like.
Oh, Laura, I had my own sordid affair with Kraft Dinner. I can't even believe that came out of my mouth. I can't believe that came out of I can't believe it went into my mouth. How many of you watching are absolutely shocked to think of me eating Kraft Dinner? Anybody? But here's the deal. What happened to me in Canada as well is I was about 20 years old, and I had this job, and I wasn't earning a lot of money, and I mean, it was really tough times, like really tough times. And my girlfriend and I would go to, I think it was Save On Foods, and we'd wait because about once a month they would put Kraft Dinner on sale for 99 cents a box. And so we would basically just go like, that's $1 a meal, man. Like, I'm in. And we would just buy box after box. And for weeks, that's all we'd have because we didn't know money. So it's like here it is, Kraft Dinner. What are we having for lunch? Kraft Dinner. Why are you even asking me that question? So I have to say the lucky thing for me is I ended up with no positive childhood link from that. So here's my question for you today. I'm curious if your change has influenced any change in other people. I wonder about that. I always do.
Yeah, I think it definitely has, in terms of the percolation through friends and family members. My husband, I take the lead on cooking now because I prefer to, and I'm a better cook, and I then know what I want to eat, and so he gets the benefit of that, obviously. Yeah. I have friends that I have recommended the program to. I had a friend coming over. She might actually be watching. My friend Gemma, my lovely, lovely, beautiful friend, beautiful soul, Gemma. And I remember she came over one day, and I was drinking my Alka-Geyser. I was making Alka-Geyser, I said, and she was like, what is this? And I was like, it's a hack. It's like how I get, 5 servings of vegetables in like one go, blitz it, do it in the morning. I know that I'm getting like all the baseline nutrients, and it's not so much about the bad stuff that you're eating, but knowing that I'm getting enough of the good stuff in. And she was like, oh, that just makes so much sense. And she was sold. So then she went and signed up for the program. And what I'm hoping is that my parents, bless them, my lovely parents, who, that's probably my big message, my big takeaway from this, is that having done all of the things that I did, all the yo-yos, everything that I tried, I didn't fully believe that change was possible. I thought there was an inevitability to like how my health was going to go, and that I was going to wind up looking and feeling like my parents do at their age. And I know now that it's up to me. Like, it's my decision. I have choice in this, that I'm not addicted to the foods that I thought I was addicted to. I know that I can be healthy as I age. I can be mobile. I can feel good in my joints. And so, yeah, that's my hope, is that I could get my parents to believe the same and do the program as well.
I am such a big fan of that idea, and I really love the overall message. When I first became what my friends lovingly referred to as a food crank, that's what they used to call me. Like, you're a food crank. And but they would always say to me, like, what do you want to live forever? What do you want to live forever? And I'm like, no, I just want to live well. Because I watched my grandparents, and the last 20 years of their life, like, my grandfather was old on the day I met him, and how old was he, in his 60s? Like, he was old, man. Like, no wonder listen, I'll tell you what, you won't tell me where you are in your 30s. I'm not telling you where I am in my 50s, but I'll tell you this. I was so terrified of becoming 50. And let's just I want to find this out. Like, How many of you are in a decade right now with your age that you were once absolutely terrified of? Like, who's in a decade you were once like terrified of, right? Yeah, I was so terrified. I was so terrified of getting to my 30s. I was so terrified of getting to my 40s. I was terrified. You know what's really crazy, Laura? I love my 50s. I mean, I love it. But, you know, I think one of the reasons that we're so afraid of that stuff is that the generations that came before us, in our case particularly, didn't do the aging process all that well. And that's because of dietary issues. And so, you know, I really, like, it sounds cliched, but like, honestly, 50 is the new 30. Like, you know, if you're mobile, if you can see your own, belt buckle. I don't know what you guys were thinking. If I'm talking belt buckle, but I mean, if you can walk and you can move and stuff like that, then like being 50 is like being 30, only with more wisdom, more money, more whatever. You know, it's like it's a different thing. So I love your message, very encouraging. And I want to share this with you about parents. They are also here to have their own journey, and they will arrive at it when they're ready to arrive at it. And I was very lucky because long before WildFit, my father had a heart attack. And I think I really should ask him one day. I think he was younger than I am today. I think he was 46 or something. And I think his dad died at about that age. So it was like, and I can tell you, my dad, like, he never expected him to see his 50s. He didn't, because his dad didn't, you know, that kind of thing. And then, you know, he and I started talking about food a lot because he was writing this book about human history and all that kind of stuff. And I became interested in, you know, evolution. And then he and I started having these conversations about food and so on. And he completely became a food crank as well. And, you know, now he's deep into his 70s, and, you know, and up until the last few years, he was still out there walking, running like, you know, 10, 15 miles a day. I don't know how much he's exercising these days. I'm sure he's still at it, but it's like the difference is, in a real sense, the question is, how old do you want to be before you start to feel old? You know, and I think that's a really big question. And so I just want to offer you that, you know, my dad, who was maybe the most obstinate and like not wanting to hear what I had to say at all, he found his way there, and my mom found her way there. And so the only advice that I would have for you about this is that, and I know you've heard me say this before because it's in the training program, but the more you push, the more they'll resist. The more you lead, the more chance there is they'll follow. And that's all we can do. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
Listen, it's such a treat to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with people. It's a genuine inspiration. And you do absolutely look like you must have just squeaked your way into the 30s, but we'll believe you anyway.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks very much. We're going to go over to Ingrid now. Ingrid, hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
How are you? I can.
Good. Wonderful. Well, I'm in my upper 60s. My husband is in his upper 70s. So, and we loved what we went with WildFit, and we still kept losing after the graduation call in May. So, and just the other day, last week, we went through all our closets and emptied it out. I got rid of a lot of clothes we had before. So we are really excited because we don't want to go back. We don't want to go back.
Ingrid, that's one of the funny things. With most diets, you have to empty out the closets with most diets, you have to empty out the fridge and the cupboards. With WildFit, you got to empty out the closets.
That's right. And we don't want to go back. So that's why we said, okay, we are not going back there. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I just graduated in May with the WildFit tribe, and we on Facebook we have the group now, which is a WildFit Feb 20 tribe. Then there's Living WildFit, then there's WildFit Alumni, and then there's Mind Valley WildFit, and it's so confusing. And some people are in one and not the other, and they have questions. And
all right, let me help for sure. One of the things that's happened is that we've been so lucky with our success that the company, like so many of those groups aren't even ours. They're just fans that went and created groups. And so, you know, we do the best we can to encourage people to be in official groups so we can, but many of them aren't ours. But the ones that are ours is there's a open public WildFit community group called WildFit Community. And you don't have to be a member. You don't have to pay anything. You just go to that group. and you can be there. And for people who came to WildFit through Mindvalley, there's one of those two called, I think it's called like Mindvalley WildFit. And so that's a sub tribe. That's like because Mindvalley's our publisher. And then there's one that's called Living WildFit, and that is for the members of our Living WildFit program. So those people, they get 2 monthly calls, and they have a recipes database, and they have a private Facebook group where we do private things. So those are the 3 groups to pay attention to. The rest are, join them if you like, but I think they're mostly fan created.
I joined all of them, so But one Marcia, which was, you remember, she asked a lot of questions when she was on your call. She said, which I agree, on our graduation call, you said you would have one more call like a month later.
Yes.
And she was wondering, when is he going to have it?
Do you know, Ingrid, I don't know what happened there. I was there for the call. Like, we had a call scheduled, it was ready to go. And then it turns out there was a communication breakdown somewhere, and the email never went out to all the clients. So I know they're working on fixing that, but I was like, I showed up and there were supposed to be hundreds of people on this call, and like, I'm alone. So I talked to myself about food.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you. And since the other thing was, last time when I talked to you, I was asking about statistics. And, I agreed that I do not want to go back, where I was. And I'm determined.
Okay, wait. Ingrid, before you carry on with your question, I want to call you up on this because you've said it 4 times now. I don't want to go back. Now,
yeah.
You understand? You want to switch your focus. First of all, there is no going back. I mean, there is no going back. But I know what you mean is you don't want to slide. You don't want to slide backwards. You don't want to go back. But where you got to put your focus where you want it to be. Can you tell me what you do want?
I have to lose 15 more pounds. So.
Wait. Again, language is really careful here.
Release.
But you would like to. Like, have to will activate you. Like, when we talk about diets failing people, one of the ways is you have to give up this and you have to eat that. And the more it's like, the more constrained it is, the more likely you just want to break free. And so it's not have to. So now let me ask you, what would you like?
What I would like? Well, I am feeling already awfully good. But I'm still would like to feel a little bit better. So
is it fair to say that you would like to stay on track, that you'd like to continue improving your health, and you'd like to keep having a great relationship with food? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's the first thing. Just change that language, because that's going to have a big impact. Now go with your question.
Okay, so last time when I talked to you, I talked about statistics to you. If you had done a statistics of all the ones who have taken the course and how they are doing. And a lot of people on Facebook saying Living Wild Fit and Fab 20 or whatever, they were talking about that they really are succeeding and they're fine. But then quite a few were saying they just haven't lost any weight or released any more weight, and they're starting to gain it back, and they have questions about what to do. So I was wondering, since you probably have all the emails of all the people who ever took your course, if one would make a questionnaire and reach out to them to make so they realize they are not left hanging out there.
Ingrid, we do that, and we do survey people, and we do know what the numbers of that type of thing are. In fact, I recently saw somebody in one of the big WildFit groups asking, hey, during the pandemic, and we've seen quite a lot of this in the pandemic, because people, like, it's funny. In WildFit, we prepare you for the day that, you lose a job, or or a pet dies, or we think of all the normal things that might trigger something. Do you know what's really funny, Ingrid? We never prepared people for a global lockdown. We just didn't build that into the coaching program before. I don't know why. We were thoughtless. We should have added that in. But so now what we are finding is that there have been some people that have gone into this pandemic and they've gone, well, and by the way, here's part of the problem, Ingrid. Most people thought the pandemic lockdown was going to be 2 weeks, because that's how they sold it to us. If the world just locks down for 2 weeks, we can get this virus under control. And so we've been at it for 3 months now. Here's one of the problems is people are like, well, if it's only going to be 2 weeks, what's wrong if I don't go into spring for a little while? What's wrong if I, this and that? So of course, then it turned into 4 weeks, and then it's like, and now the habits are getting created, right? So obviously we've been looking at that with our clients, but I saw this woman posted in one of the WildFit groups, I don't know, 2 weeks or so ago. And she said, I lost 25 and I've put like 5 back on, and I'm afraid I'm headed in the wrong direction. Can anybody else tell me how they're doing? And I was like, I'm a little nervous. I want to see what's going on, especially with the lockdown being the way it is. And the vast majority of the comments are, I've lost more weight, I've stayed on track. And then every now and again, there's somebody that's like, I've put some of the weight back on. I've spoken to some of the people that have put some of their weight back on. And here's what's interesting. And this is so important. Remember that weight is not the ultimate measure of health. It's not even a very good one. Because as I've spoken to those people, here's what I found. Yeah, I've put a little bit of weight back on, but I'm not eating all the garbage that I used to before. I just haven't gone to spring for a little while. So you understand that they've still radically improved their health. They just that one area where they're like, I should have spent a little bit more time in spring, and then I'd lose weight. And consistently, when we've surveyed people, we did one very big class with over 1,000 people in it, and there was one woman who was very loud about it. She was really struggling and it wasn't working. And we know that can happen sometimes in week 7 and 8 because people are struggling to flip the switch and this kind of stuff. And so in the end, she kind of riled a bunch of people up. And I was like, I'm really concerned. What's going on here? So I created a subgroup. And I said, everybody who feels like they're struggling, please come over to the subgroup. If you're not struggling, don't come to the subgroup. So I go over to the subgroup. Then I started talking to the people individually in the subgroup. And when they talked about struggling, this is what they meant. Well, sometimes I still have a little bit of a craving. Okay, yeah, but have you put the weight back on? No. Are you going back to the way you're eating before? No. So out of the whole struggling group, there were about 100 people that were struggling out of 1,000, which is still damn good statistics. There was only about 5 that were really, truly struggling. And one of them, the one who was so loud about it, I actually got on a private call with her. I don't do this anymore. And I don't even like sharing this story because then people go, if I complain enough, I'll talk to Eric. No, I don't do it. But I got on and I had a private call with her. And here's what she had not said to anybody in the Facebook chat while she was trying to and by the way, I don't blame her for this, you guys. Isn't it true that when somebody's breaking an addiction, that sometimes they're a little bit like a drowning person and they can drown the people around them? Is it, you guys with me on this? Like so she wasn't bad, but what happened is that when I got on the private call with her, she told me that funny enough, she'd been here at an all-inclusive resort here in the Dominican Republic, about 5 hours away from me. And she'd been at the all-inclusive resort, and for 2 weeks, she'd let herself, she goes, I gave myself permission. But in the Facebook group, she was saying, I've been sticking to everything all the way, right? And so one of the things that has to happen for us to stay on track is personal honesty. Hey, if you want to go to the all-inclusive resort and give yourself permission, go for it. Go for it. Here's the thing. How many of you that are watching now that are WildFit clients have at some point conducted a bit of an experiment where you ate the thing that you used to eat, but you don't really eat anymore and you did an experiment? How many of you? How many of you, that experiment made sure you won't do it again? How many? Oh, look. So I don't have an issue with that as long as we maintain our personal honesty and our personal responsibility. So what I would suggest to you is that, and then one more thing, sorry about that, is that the reason we created the Living WildFit program was we recognized that, as much as I think WildFit has the capacity to completely change somebody's behavior in 3 months, and we've proven it again and again, there are people who need and want additional community and additional support. So we have one place where they can have that completely for free, but then we created another place where they can have an even more detailed support. And so I have to admit, when somebody writes in the public group and they're like, I feel like I've, lost track a little, well, why don't you go, if you want a little extra support, why don't you join the membership? And they're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, okay, then you know what to do. Either do it or come and get our help, but please don't give me trouble that you're not doing it. I think that's kind of my message. You're on the right track for sure.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. I have a hard time with my partner. The one who started with me, trying WildFit. I think she sort of stopped in the middle of it. And now she's talking about maybe do some fasting a little bit to get back into it. But I try to push her, I keep asking her, so how are you doing?
All I can suggest, Ingrid, is that fasting, there are certain exercises, there are certain things you can do that can be very good for your health, but they're not going to give you health.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would suggest that fasting is one of those and exercise is one of those. So if somebody is already like having a nutrition problem because they've had a bad diet, exercise is a terrible idea for them. And so is fasting. What we have to do before we fast, because fasting, by the way, is a form of exercise. It's exercising your cleansing system. It's exercising your body's filtration system of proteins. Like it's so for somebody to do exercise or for somebody to fast, they first have to clean their diet. So if you really want her to, you know what you should really encourage her to do? Encourage her to jump in and do the global challenge with us on June 8th. Get her to come and join us. Just 2 weeks. It's I think it's and Ingrid, like I think it's $27. Like it's nothing. So, get her to jump in and do that. And I think you'll see some change for her.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Okay.
Ingrid, great to have you. And guys, guess what? It's so exciting. We got Peter.
Eric, I've been here the whole time.
I know. I saw you over in the live audience, but I'm glad that Nicola managed to encourage you to come and say hello. Let's talk about chips, Peter.
Okay, a couple of things. I have a couple of admissions as Nicola's husband, and I can be kind of whiny about what I have to give up. Is that anyone who's in a relationship, I am one of the causes of Nicola not being more successful because she's far more disciplined about what she's capable of than I am. So that's not to let me off the hook or any of that kind of stuff. It's just.
Hey, Peter, we lost you for a second. I don't know what. Sorry, Peter.
Here?
Carry on.
Okay.
You're back. Yeah,
Okay.
We got you.
So one of the books I think that really addresses this issue about willpower and what I call an underlying assumption is a book called Immunity to Change. And it's by Robert Kagan and Lisa Leahy, two Harvard people, not just because they're from Harvard, but what they say makes a lot of sense. And in the book Immunity to Change, they identify what is called an underlying assumption. And so they talk about immunity to change means people who just can't seem to make the change. And what that book says that I find very true is that my deep underlying assumption is that my food life is over. Everything I ever enjoyed is over. Because Nicola's going, okay, let's go full turkey. We're going to go into deep spring and we're going to slam it. And she could probably do that because she's got, I don't know, she's German. She can do that. So when I hear that,
let's just throw a little racial stereotyping into the conversation for fun.
I mean, in a disciplined way, it's really cool. But what I hear, the message I hear is, okay, my life's over. My food life is over. I am never going to get to have chips again. I am never going to have. It's just over. So I know this, and it's really true. That's the assumption that is driving me ultimately from sticking to, sticking to WildFit and all that, is that underlying assumption. So that's one thing. Then there's also the tension of that willpower is not sustainable. And you know this in motivational psychology, is that willpower is not sustainable because it's like a spring. You can push it down for so long, but it's not sustainable.
Okay,
so
Peter,
there's two issues here. So I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
I really want to talk to you about this because, you probably know that I've done some training in like neuro-linguistic programming and that kind of stuff as a coach. I did that kind of stuff. And it's funny, yesterday in our workshop, one of the clients asked me, when am I going to start teaching NLP? And I said, I'm never going to do that. I will never do that. I'd be good at it. I'm certain of it. But I wouldn't do it. And the reason I wouldn't do it is that most of the people that I see signing up to go get themselves trained in psychology and in neurolinguistics and that kind of stuff are people that are in need of therapy more than they're in need of strategies for doing therapy on people. And the reason I'm saying this to you is that it's almost bad that you're as intelligent as you are and that you went and learned that stuff, because now that's like, oh, well, now I have a reason that it's like this. It's like, oh, well, I have an underlying assumption, so I'm off the hook. Plus, willpower doesn't really work anyway. Any psychologist will tell you. And so the funny thing is that sometimes when we go in and read about this stuff, we actually almost weaken our ability to deal with it. But let's forget about all that. Okay, we'll come back to it in a minute. But I first want to talk to you. like I just specifically want to talk about chips for a minute, and there may be other issues, but I do want to talk about chips for a minute. When we talk about chips, are we talking about American chips or British chips?
Talking about the vegetable chips.
That's what I thought. French fries for the rest of us.
No. These new kind of Nicola. I don't know what she knows.
Oh, like dehydrated vegetable chips, like crisps.
Plantains and carrots, or they're made into. They have the crunch.
Yeah.
It's all about the crunch, Eric. It's the crunch.
It's all about the crunch. Okay, and it's not all about the crunch. It's also all about the fat. And it's also about the salt. And it's, by the way, do you know what kind of fat it is? It's like not the best fat. Let's just, those chips are not made in the best fat. And by the way, to get them crunchy, do you know how you get them crunchy? You deep fry them. Occasionally they dehydrate them. It's true. But what I really want to tap into here a little bit is those chips, like, you want to be able to eat them and you want to be able to feel free to eat them, and you don't want Nicola telling you can't have them anymore. I get that. I really get that. What would it be like for you to feel free where you didn't have to eat them when you didn't really want to?
Oh, yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, yes, please, sir. Yes.
Okay, but you understand it's a subtlety in the question. But what I'm saying is that you're fighting for only half of the freedom. You're fighting only for the freedom to have it. And what I want you to do is to fight for the freedom not to have it. And here's the joke, is in the freedom to have it and not have it is this middle place where you can choose it or not choose it. But what I'm feeling is the case here is that you're in that place of, because of that underlying assumption, it's like the rebellion against that underlying assumption is so strong that if you try to take it away from me, not only will I not agree to that, but I'll go get a bag of it and eat them right now. Like it's like a sort of rebellious feeling. So my question for you is, would you like if you have two buttons on your desk, and one is a button that will end all desire for those chips ever again, and the other one is a button that would just give you freedom from them, so that on the odd time you wanted to have them, you could enjoy them. Which button would you press?
I'd press the freedom button.
The full on, I don't want to have them anymore ever, or the freedom to choose?
The freedom to choose. I'm not completely clear. Maybe the freedom to choose.
Yeah, I think you're like, what I'm saying is, would you press the button that would make you never want to eat them ever again, or press the button that would allow you to eat them consciously, rationally, occasionally?
I think I press a button that I'd never want to eat them again.
Okay, you see, but that's an important thing to know, because some people, by the way, in the audience, how many of you, it doesn't matter what the food is, right? But how many of you have a crutch food where you'd also like to, and maybe you did this with WildFit already. So if you've already done it or you want to do it, you press a button and never want that food again. How many of you have a food like that? How many of you have done it? How many of you through WildFit or something else, you've done it? Like I'm done. I certainly have, like ice cream. I don't even, there's no chance of it. But then how many of you have also had a food where you've said, I want to press the second button, where it's like, I want to be free of it, but I still want to be free to have it from time to time. How many of you have successfully done that? That's another type of freedom, right? That's another, and that's the freedom I have, say, with pizza crust. Like I don't eat bread, but if I go to Italy and I want to have a pizza, I'm free to do that. So now, Peter, here's my question for you. What do you think the impact is of not pressing one of those buttons? What's the consequence?
I don't understand. I'm not clear.
Well, if you continue to just eat them whenever you want to eat them, even though you don't want to eat them because you really wish you wouldn't eat them, and then you feel guilty that you ate them, or you then want to eat them another time, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not going to eat them today, but then you find yourself eating them again. If you just keep living like that, what's the consequence?
Well, this is a bad consequence, Eric. I'm 71. So we've got COVID-19 all over but this is not a good consequence.
You are talking about a little bag of COVID-19. I mean, you really are, like, it's a carbohydrate with saturated, disgusting, awful quality fat and the worst possible quality salt in most cases. Like you're talking about, like, I would put it to you like this. Every time you eat a bag of those, your immune system, it's like in Star Trek when it's like, okay, lower the shields. You eat them, lower the shields. I'll tell you what, if you eat a bag of those, close all the windows, close the doors, don't answer the door, don't take any packages that come in the house, because I'm of course kidding a little bit. But I do want you to kind of get this linkage where you recognize that you're absolutely right to be concerned about that particular food relative to your own immunity. So if we have leverage, you clearly want it to be different. Let's go back to this. What's your earliest memory of a yummy, permissible, crunchy, salty, kind of fun thing? Where does that come from for you?
Well, I think my earliest memory is I had kind of a crazy doctor father who would go on these big tangents, and he finally decided that, this was in the 50s, mind you. So he came home and said, "Okay, we're going to be no desserts. We're having no desserts in the house. We're going to have whole wheat bread." He was way ahead of his time. And so the message is that in our family, we are having no desserts except maybe at Christmas and Thanksgiving. And there's going to be he was right, no sugar, but it was so absolute. And I always thought, well, that's such crazy psychology because there's no choice in that. It's that you can never have that. And if I might modify my answer, I think it would be the choice to occasionally have it, probably, just so I could have the freedom to have it every once in a while. I think that's actually I don't think it's realistic for me to say I'd push a button, it'd be gone forever in my case. I think just if I had the choice.
Do you know what's really funny, Peter? I don't know if we're going to check with the audience here on this, but can you guys tell me, have any of you had this experience where there was a food and you put it in that category 4 where you occasionally have it, and then you occasionally had it, and then you just said, I'm done with this, and it moved to category 5? So Peter, do you understand that that's exactly the path you want to be on? Is you want to have the freedom to have it, and you may have it occasionally. And if it doesn't really sit well with you, your body's going to tell you. The trouble is that when you're having it all the time, your body won't tell you a damn thing. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I want you to have the freedom to eat them when you want to eat them, but I also want you to have the freedom to not eat them. And so here's what I'm thinking here is you are running a very, very normal pattern of rebelling against your father, aren't you? I mean, he came home and he said, you got to no dessert, man. And you can't have that. And you can't have this. And so is there a little part of you that feels a little inner sense of rebellion when you have a bag of these chips?
I'm not sure if it's about my father. It's more of an inner sense of rebellion. My mother used to say, Peter, you want to do what you want to do when you want to do it. It used to drive me nuts. And it was so true. So it's a little bit like that. You want to do what you want to do when you want to do it. It's actually good. Has a kind of a
okay,
catchy.
Peter, now listen to me. I like this. And you could be seconds away from a breakthrough, really. You want to do what you want to do when you want to do it. I'm with you. But don't you also want to not do what you wish you wouldn't do when you know you shouldn't?
Chills on my arms, Eric, no question.
Okay. So now what you have to recognize is who's controlling the decision when you go pick up that bag of chips, when you go buy it in the store. Who's controlling it? Is it the 13-year-old rebel who's just proving that they can do what they want? Or is it the mature 70-year-old who's saying, hey, I eat these from time to time, but not today? Where's the real freedom? I want you to exercise with that. And I want to give you a gift, Peter. I don't know if are you by chance planning to join us for the June 8th 2-week challenge?
Are you kidding? Nicholas is going to kill me if we don't both go and do that. Yeah, we're definitely doing that.
All right. Yeah. If you're not already, if you're already registered for it, go for it. It's $27. But if you're not already registered for it, Kelsey set him up with a pass. He's going as my gift one way or the other. But here's the deal, Peter. If you go in with my pass, the commitment is you've got to do it properly, like all the way. You got to do the exercises, put the extra effort in because you've already seen it work, right? So in the community around you, you've seen so many people it work for. So go in and do those 2 weeks. And then remember in those first 2 weeks, you know some of what's going to happen in there. I want you to really explore with this concept that we've just talked about. Yes, you should be rebelling to have what you want, but you should also be rebelling against the food industry because they are controlling your wants. See, the next time you want that food, I want you to recognize that they paid incredibly good money to campaign your psychology, to take your freedom away. So now you have to take this skill you already have, which is rebelling against the man. And you got to realize that it's a different one to rebel against now. And I think if you can rebel against that one, you're going to get yourself some freedom from those chips. And you're going to be way more on board with supporting Nicola. And one more thing I want to leave you with is that, and Nicola, I hope you're watching as well, and I want you to hear me about this. I want Nicola to be more gentle about pronouncements. Nicola, I don't want you coming home going, we're going into spring and we're cutting out everything. I want you to make it more invitational. It's like, you know what? I think we could use a little bit more freedom from some of the foods that have snuck back into our life today. And how would you feel about joining me for spring? And then you, Peter, as a chivalrous and self-interested as well man, I want you to do it for you and for her. And rebel against the food industry. And so I'm really excited to see what happens for you guys on June 8th.
Shall I horrify everybody and tell them I've had a heart attack and I'm really high risk? Yeah.
There you go. So now, Peter, I'm going to do something a little, if you're okay with this. How long ago did you have the heart attack?
9 years ago.
Okay. Where were you?
I was in Sebastopol, California.
And what were you doing?
I was all by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was living alone at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I fell on the bed, had a massive heart attack, and drove myself to the hospital 10 miles away. And
my dad did the same thing, idiot, driving himself to the hospital.
I know, idiot. And the doctor said another 30 minutes and you'd be dead.
Okay.
So I'm kind of lucky to be here. Yeah.
What was it like in your chest when it started? What was that feeling?
It was when I said, I don't feel so good. And I fell on the bed and I felt like I had an anvil. I had an elephant crushing.
Like a huge crate of crispy chips sitting on your chest?
On my chest. I thought my ribs, my ribs are going to break. The pressure was so awful.
Like how many boxes of chips do you think it would take to crush your chest like that?
Those chips are pretty light.
Yeah, it would take quite a few boxes, wouldn't it? But here, I'm joking around a little bit about that, but I want to then unjoke for a minute. And I want you to imagine you on the bed with that crushing pressure in your chest. Go and tell him you're eating these chips. Tell that Peter you're eating these chips. What's he saying about that?
Are you out of your mind?
Did you just swear on Thrive Time? It's the first time anybody swore on Thrive Time, everybody. But that's the emotion that's coming up. Peter, like seriously, I want you to do it again. Like you're on the bed, you're feeling it. It's maybe you're now in the car and you're driving to the hospital. You don't know you're going to make it. And now there's this like 9-year-old or Peter is sitting in the car going, you know what's really crazy? You're having a heart attack right now and I'm going to keep eating the chips. Like, how do you react about that?
Yeah. And I later wrote this song that means a lot to me. And the song is called I Want to Live. And yeah.
All right. So can we make this deal? After the 2 weeks, you're probably, I really feel like you're going to be done with the chips anyway, but here's what I want you to do. After the 2 weeks, all I'm going to ask you to do is not during the 2 weeks, that's a different exercise, but after the 2 weeks, if you reach for a bag of chips, you're whatever, you can buy them. You can have them in the house. I'm not one of these people that thinks, oh, don't have it in the house. That's the key. No, that's not how it works. Freedom comes from being able to not eat it when it's right in front of you. And all I'm going to ask you to do is sit down with your guitar and play that song, but with this in your mind. You're playing that song to you on the bed, facing the heart attack. I want you to recognize that there's this perspective shift that you need to have. The you that had that heart attack would be a little disappointed with the you of right now. I'm not saying that to make you feel shame or guilt. I'm saying that because you need that perspective in this moment. The next time you're in the store and you're reaching for the bag, you need that Peter who's having that heart attack to say, dude, WTF, what's going on? And so I really want you to associate that, because you're right. Like I noticed that you went with the COVID. You were willing to admit the COVID risk pretty early on, but the heart attack risk is significantly more serious because it combines the two. And so I really, and by the way, hang on a second. Nicola, you're not, I was going to bring Nicola on. Nicola, can you click the link and join me over here. Come back over to stage 10. If you can do it real fast. Nicola, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's maybe technically more difficult than is possible. All I want you to get, Peter, again, one more thing. She loves you like a lot, and she cares a great deal about you. And so something you need to know, and Nicola, I can see, you know what? I have a way I can kind of bring her on. I know I can bring her on. Here's a great way to do it. Like, this is going to work. We're going to do it like
there
this.
She is. She just joined.
Oh, did she? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me bring her in properly, because then we can hear her that way. Okay. Nicola, hold on for a second.
I'm kind of the luckiest man in the world, by the way. To have a wife like her is incredible.
Okay, Nicola, we're going to have you in with us here in a second. Okay, there we go. Look at that.
Wow.
Ooh.
We're having a threesome right here on the show. So listen, I don't know. It's been a long weekend. So Nicola, the reason I wanted to bring you on is I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be, you don't even have to say anything. I just want to feel the energy of the answer. But when you see Peter making an exception, say with these chips, or say with some food that you know is not ideal for him, and you think about that, what's going on inside your heart? What's going on inside your brain when you see that? When you see that he's doing something that may take him away from you sooner than is necessary. How does that feel?
Well, awful, of course.
Now, I normally won't go in a direction like this, Peter, because this is not designed for you to feel shame about that food. It's just designed right now to associate you to the reality of the perspective that the younger you who had a heart attack can have, and the present day Nicola can have. You said it yourself. You're the luckiest guy in the world. So here's my question. How many years do you want to be this lucky? How many years do you want to be this lucky? And I think it's as many as possible is the answer. And so what does that mean? It means turn things around. And it means do what it takes to turn them around. And it means associating to this, because honestly, could you eat a bag of chips right now? If I put one in front of you, could you eat it right now?
No chance.
No chance. Why? Because you have perspective. There's no chance you could do it. And so the next time you are tempted by one, I want you to remember this conversation. I want you to remember this feeling. I want you to remember what she's going through. This woman who loves you so damn much. And it's like, she's looking at you going, dude, it's almost like you're trying to do a slow suicide deal here. So, I want you to be here for me. And not only is it that, but Peter, it's not just that you're there for her. It's that you're there for her in the best possible condition for as long as possible. And so I just want you to remember how you feel right now. In fact, what I'd like you to do, one last step here, I'd like you to imagine that you have a bag of chips in front of you right now. Would you normally eat them right out of the bag, or would you eat them out of the bowl?
No, I'm civilized, Eric. I'd put them in a bowl first.
I wanted to check. I
have good manners. I'd like you to know that. So yes.
Okay. So step number one is that if you eat any of those chips at all ever in the next 60 days, you have to eat them out the bag. If you eat any of those chips at all in the next 60 days, you got to eat them uncivilized out the bag. Is it a deal?
The bag is thrown away.
What's that?
The bag is thrown away. They're in the bowl now.
Oh,
she threw the bag away.
Oh, you mean the ones that are in the house already?
No. They are still there, but in the bowl, not in the bag.
I understand. I'm talking in the future. And throw those ones away. He can't eat the ones out of the bowl. He has to eat the ones out of the bag. So And then the reason I want you to eat them out of the bag is I want you to have a little bit of a change of your pattern here. But I also want you to know that as you hear the crinkling sound of the bag, as you stick your hand into the bag, you will come back to this conversation and you will remember the emotions that Nicola showed you here. And you will remember this feeling of, why the hell am I doing this? So you're going to eat them out the bag if you eat them never mind 60 days, 30 days, 30 days for the month of June. Let's keep it simple. For the month of June, if you eat in those chips, you eat them out of the bag. Is that a deal?
Deal.
All right. And do the first 2 weeks and you'll be done with it anyway. And Nicola, I'm really sorry to put you in a position where you had to access those emotions. And I didn't want to do that. But I think sometimes every now and again, it's important for your loved one to really understand how important something is to you. And so I want to thank you for being open. I want to thank you for outing Peter in the first place and giving me the opportunity to connect with him. And Peter, I want you to rebel. I want you to rebel and create the freedom for yourself that you really deserve, because you do deserve it.
Thank you, Eric.
Cheers. Thanks so much for being here. Good to see you guys again. A pleasure as always. Wow. I hadn't really intended to go that deep. That's the kind of stuff that'll actually happen on WildFit calls sometimes, where we go in that deep to kind of figure out what's going on with people. And I hadn't really planned to do that here, but I'm glad that we got to, because frankly, Nicola and Peter are very, very, very good people. They're great clients of ours. We've had a great relationship with them. And so it's really nice to be able to share this experience with them. We are now going to go over to, who are we going to? Hang on, I lost. Do we have Esther? I see Esther's camera, but hang on. Let's see here. We have, okay, Esther, I think we've got you back. Here you go. Say hello. Esther, no sound. I don't understand. Sound from the audience from her? You guys getting sound? Nope, it's not coming through anything. Unplug the headphones, just see what happens. Like unplug them from the computer? Esther, I wish. I'm so curious, but I'll tell you what, when we put you back out into the waiting room, type your question in the chat and I'm going to do the best I can to get to it, or type whatever you want to share in the chat and I'll do the best I can. So sorry that didn't work. Hey, Michelle, how are you doing?
Grand, thank you very much. Good early morning from me over here in Down Under. Hey, I love the work that you did there. That was fantastic, listening to those stories and the associations of the eating. And it's funny, I just wanted to share, Eric, I definitely had got into that pattern as a mother, and I was so grateful for the transition to set my life on a new trajectory. And I think as a woman and as a mother, we are naturally conditioned to be giving to others. We can see that with Nicola, she's giving, and it's just part of who we are. And what happens is we often put everyone else first before ourselves. And I definitely, in my journey, in my WildFit journey, had got to that point where I was trying to juggle being back at work and trying to juggle, doing the household things and being the best mum I could be. And, of course, the first ball that I go and drop was health. And so it's really important to be conscious of the fact that we need to nurture ourselves. And the program actually taught me that. And suddenly I wasn't getting all those sort of 3 o'clock dips. What was happening was I was sitting at my computer one day typing in the middle of the night, and I couldn't stay awake anymore. And I realized I'm just burning the candle at both ends here, and I don't have the energy, and I felt like I didn't have the time. I felt a bit like Peter, where I just was sort of doing the same old patterns that I knew were wrong for me, but just how was I going to break those? And finally, through that program, it was so great because I got to the point where I didn't have that 3 o'clock dip. I didn't have the lack of energy. I felt like I have more time for everything. And that's often the excuse that we use, is we don't have time. And with my children, I noticed that this eating healthy, and I thought I was eating healthy, and I didn't think, I definitely didn't think I had a sugar addiction. I was like, I don't eat sugar. And I was quite, virtuous about that. But I was craving carbs. I was eating breads like Ingrid, and I was eating lots of carbs and going back for seconds of pasta and cheese and all those sorts of things. And so finally I started to get the energy back, and the thing I wanted was the energy, and I wanted that vitality that I had when I was younger. I was sort of mourning the fact that I didn't have that person who I used to be. And then finally, and one bonus was I got back to my old body that I had before I had kids. And that was exciting because I mean, it wasn't about the scales, I was about how I felt. And then eventually I realized that this was trickling into so many different areas of my life. It was making me a better parent. It was making me do more study and get more excited about, because my brain was ready and I was feeling more emotionally balanced. I was perhaps not, panning out as a mother when things go wrong. And so finally I was feeling like I was really living in different ways. And there was one key moment. There's two key moments actually. One was when we were going on holiday and my husband said to me, "Oh, have you got your inhaler?" And this was like 6 to 8 months after the program. And I said to him, "Oh, no, no, I don't." And now you have to understand, like at university, I used to have to go on a nebulizer from time to time. I've had asthma attacks and had to, nearly flaked out on the way to hand in an assignment when I was running late one day. So I was, I had some bad asthma going on. And so he asked me this question and I suddenly realized, oh my God, I don't even know where an inhaler is. And I had 5 on the go. I had one in my bag, one in the car, one in my bike bag, one in my toilet bag, one in my handbag. And I checked the one in the truck and it was expired. And I was like, but I take my inhaler every day. I take it morning and night because I'm usually wheezy. And this is, my Ventolin. And he's like, "Oh, when's the last time you took it?" And I was like, I don't know. And that was really liberating because it was like, wow, here am I going on holiday and I'm not even taking an inhaler. This is great. And suddenly I never had anticipated that I would lose my asthma. And then, as I said, like it set me on a new trajectory. And then all of a sudden, this application came through because, of course, I was like, man, I've got to spread this word. And so I did my coaching, and I'm loving being a coach and really enjoying working with people down under and across the world and doing this coaching. And an email came out about this, would you like to go to Africa? And I looked at that email and I went back to that old self and that old doubt and, that feeling of, oh, I'll never be able to do it with the diet mentality. I looked at the email and went, oh, that's something cool, but that's something cool someone else would do. And I thought, I won't apply. And then I listened to myself and I got that same anger, that same, like, oh, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of, behaving this way. And so out of spite, I almost put my application in. And that's what I mean about traveling on a new trajectory. Like, it just was incredible to suddenly be doing something that I never, ever would have anticipated I would be doing and living as a mother. I honestly thought my adventure days were done. Eric, I've been back with you twice now and I love it every time. It totally vibes me up. I just love the place. And here am I, running around in the bush chasing the chief and making sure that I definitely get home. But I just think this is incredible. And here I am, not even taking an inhaler with me. And I just think it's a great message to be sending out now because, yes, in COVID, we've got into some bad habits and we've got into these old patterns. But now it's time to break those because we can totally get on a different path, a path that we never would have anticipated.
Oh, Michelle, you're such an inspiration. And it's really been a privilege to share both WildFit and our trips out to visit with the Hadza Bushmen and that kind of stuff. You always bring such good energy and fun with you. So I'm glad to have you here on the show. Talk to me about, I think that through the pandemic, we've had quite a few people saying, like, I'm really glad that I did WildFit long before or during. We had thousands and thousands of people complete WildFit during the pandemic time. And so many of them were saying, I'm so grateful that I did this. It's funny, the people who did it during the pandemic time got really, really, really good results. And the people who did it, some of them before, came into the pandemic time and they found themselves kind of like slipping a little, the little pandemic pounds or what have you. Talk to me about what that was like for you. You come into the pandemic and then all of a sudden you can see people shopping and buying stuff. Did you find yourself slipping a little here or there, or your family, or what did you do to keep yourself on track?
Well, the lucky thing was I was coaching one of the big groups with you during the pandemic. So that was fantastic because at the beginning of the pandemic, went into sort of fear mode. And for like 2 days, I was hard out buying groceries and trying to I bought frozen vegetables for the first time. And I was in that mode of feeling a bit nervous. But then I think my why became really, really strong during the pandemic. And it was interesting seeing people go through that process because we had the perfect excuse. Oh, it's too hard to get things. Oh, it's just too tricky. Oh, but, and it was amazing seeing people go right through to the end. With me, I became really strong on my why, and I noticed that my family's health, because I did become a better cook in lots of ways, and I was making things from scratch because we couldn't get lots of things. So that became really good, and the children really got on board. They were like getting in there and making things all the time as well. And so we started to eat really healthy. And definitely the only time that I sort of felt like I could have started to tip was when we had our first family get together. And so we all had, and this was the first time we've been together for well over 2 months. And we had all those treats, all those things. And it was interesting. And my kids were kind of like, oh, wow, we can have ice cream again and we can have these things. And so they're trying all those things. And my son said, Mum, try a teaspoon of ice cream. And I said, oh, no, I'm all cool. Because dairy is just not my friend with asthma. And he said, go on, try it. And I thought, actually, I will try it and I'll see what it tastes like. And I tried this mouthful of ice cream and it just was revolting. It was fatty on the top of and it was just so, it was like I was drinking golden syrup or something. It was so sweet. And my son came running up to me laughing and he said, Mum, who made the cheesecake? And I said, it's a bought one, whatever. And, it was his nana's. And he said, please don't tell her, but it's too sweet for me. Because he had been conditioned to be eating the way we'd been eating. And he was like, I can't do this either. And it was just really interesting to see that lovely effect flow on without.
No, that's so gorgeous.
Lead. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things. With all the like letters that we get and all the comments we see on social, I mean, there's a lot of different types that are my favorite. Of course, when somebody's out of pain, that's my favorite. When somebody gets off medications, that's my favorite. But really, really, really one of my biggest, most favorite ones is my kids have started changing and they want to. And that just juices me all day long, because when you improve somebody's health at that age, the impact you have on the whole trajectory of their life is so incredibly profound. And so that's super, super inspirational. Michelle, I'm so glad that we got to hear your story. You're such an inspiration. And I look forward to one day when we get to coach a class together again. It was really, really fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Keep sharing that good stuff, Eric. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. We're going to go over to Jerry now. Jerry. Hey, Jerry.
Hi. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So I just wanted to say how appreciative. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to say how appreciative I am. I'm one of the people who was in the February 2020 WildFit group, so I got to experience it in the middle of the pandemic, and listening to I can relate to everything that everybody's been saying so far. My weight went from 195 down to right now it's about 170. I have a belt that at the beginning I couldn't put on, and now it's at the last rung. I have a shirt that only I could go to about here, and now it's like really loose. I had to throw out a bunch of clothes, just like had been said previously. I mean, it's amazing. And even in terms of I went to the doctor because I was on blood pressure medication, and I discussed with the doctor, can I go off the blood pressure medication, because my blood pressure right now usually runs around 110/65 now, and it had been really high. And he actually discussed with me that if I could go for a week of it staying under 100, then he would discuss reducing one of the medications. So, which was very interesting. So on all those levels, I mean, the thing has been amazing. And I'm 71 years old. I'm living in a independent living senior community. They make sometimes we have meals here if we want them. So I asked them to make the alkagizer. people saw me drinking it, so they put it on the menu because other people were drinking it. I mean, it's like really amazing. So it's like
Do they
all of
spell
these.
it? Do they spell it right? It's important they spell it right.
No, they just put in green smoothie.
Oh, you got to get them to spell. You got to get them to put it in the menu properly.
And even in terms of eating, one day I was eating. They had some dish that was supposed to be rice. It was supposed to be like wild rice with some kind of lemon on it. And I took 2 bites and it just tasted wrong. And I said, wait a minute, what is this? And they were insisting that it was brown. Whatever they were insisting, I said, no, I can't eat this. I mean, so on all the things that everyone else was saying, it's like, it's been amazing. I can't say enough positive things about everything that, the program has done.
Hey, I have a really important question for you, and excuse me if I use this as an opportunity to do a little bit of market research, but when a woman comes to me and she's 38 years old and she wants to sign up for WildFit, I'm not surprised by that. That's the demographic, and when a man comes to me at similar age and he wants to, like, I know why they're there. I get it. They come to us from all over the world. But when somebody signs up when they're 14, 15, 16 years old, I'm fascinated by why they do that. I'm fascinated. But equally, when somebody signs up in their 70s, I'm fascinated. So I want to know, what is it that happened? What kind of like, what was the motivation? What was the process that made you say, hey, I want to turn things around?
Well, I mean, I think there were a couple of things. My wife died a year ago, and she had really bad diabetes, and her attitude towards eating was basically the same as you had just discussed about the chips. Her thing was, they don't want, I should be able to eat whatever I want. I'm going to eat whatever I want. This is not fair to, I'm going to just do it. And I could see what it did to her. I mean, it wrecked her health. She didn't make it till 65 years old. And I told myself, I am not going to do that. I don't want to do it. Luckily, even though at the time last year, I was about 230 pounds. So I decided I don't want to mention another program, but that one worked too. It at least started me going because it was kind of a psychological approach. And
hey,
so
go ahead. No, let us know what helped you out there.
That was that the Gnome app.
Noom. Yep.
So that kind of got me started. So I went from 230 to about 190. And so that helped. And there I was marking down all the meals and I was doing all that stuff. After she died, I mean, she spent 2 months in hospice. It was it was really stressful. And I just decided that I didn't want it, I didn't want that to happen. My father died when he was 72. I'm 71. Now, luckily, I never had, even though I had high blood pressure, I didn't really have, I was never pre-diabetic or anything. So that was good. So my blood work was never that bad. And my doctor was telling me I should have another 30 years to go, maybe. But I just wanted to be as healthy as I could be. And this program just came along. I saw that same interview on Mind Valley. I was doing at the time, I was doing 2 other Mind Valley things. One was the Juan Pablo Barona, all his stuff, the quantum health, which I'm still doing. I mean, I'm very involved. Right now, I'm very involved with that and very involved with, I haven't had any dairy now. And basically, I haven't had any dairy, any sugar, any caffeine, any of that for 4 months now. I don't miss it. I'm fine without it. And,
Jerry, it really does help. I'm really, really inspired. How about you guys? Are you pretty inspired by Jerry's message here? Like, that's outstanding stuff. And I know for many of us, and as we heard earlier in the show, many of us have parents and we want them to make the transition. And so your story is a big, big inspiration in that direction. So I really want to thank you for sharing that. I'm super, super excited to have you here, and keep up the good work. Maybe one day when the planes are all flying again and we're having conferences, we'll get to meet in person one day, Jerry, I hope. But in the meantime, Keep up the good work, and make sure they spell Alka-Geyser correctly on the menu. Hey, Jerry, thanks very much. And everybody else, wow, what an interesting, different style of episode. Really been fascinating for me, and I hope it has also been for you. I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts, and I know we've actually gone over time, which we've never done on an episode before, but here we are. The thoughts I want to leave with you again are, if you are struggling with freedom, if you are struggling with cravings, if you are struggling with food, if you are putting on a little bit of weight, or you have done, or you're worried about being pre-diabetic, or any of those kinds of things, I want to let you off the hook. I really want you to understand that I regard those things as damage that was done to you by the food industry, that the food industry has consistently and continually, through incredibly manipulative marketing campaigns and incredible huge sums of money in lobbying, been doing everything they can to take away our sense of freedom, to take away our ability to choose. And so I want you to know that none of that right now has been your fault, and that nobody will ever care as much about your life experience as you will. And so it is your responsibility to turn around. And so I hope that you've got some tools, you've heard some ideas here that'll help you to do that. And if you want our support with it, please come on June 8th and do our challenge. And we'll make sure the link is somewhere below this in the show notes or in the comments or what have you. I want to just say thank you guys all very much. For those of you who are in the audience, let me just bring you in from, where are you? Where's my audience? There you are. Hey guys, thank you so much for being here. It's been really fun to share this experience with you guys. And I am absolutely looking forward to next week, because we're going to be bringing some fascinating conversations to bear next week. Thank you guys all very much. This is Eric Edmeades signing off from the latest version of Thrive Time.